Welcome back to 2SkeGEEKS. This is your boy Will Call and my partner in crime.
I'm John Michael. Just got off the road from Miami, and it's good to be back here. It was a long drive, man. I left Miami. I thought I was making good time. Left at 8 a.m. yesterday. Wound up not getting back to Atlanta till midnight. People do not want to yield on the road. Yeah, ran into about 3 or 4 accidents, but it's glad I was not in any one of those accidents.
Yeah, I'm glad too.
All right, good to be back.
All right, fam. So I am too ski geeked up because of the fact that we've got, as you see on the bottom of the screen, we have a fantastic, as you've heard me talk about him in the past when he received the key to the city of Annapolis. As I said before, he's my homie hero, like a big brother, because he's 5 years older than I, and he's 2 years older than John Michael. And but you have Mr. Rodney Barnes in the house, and we are so honored to have him with us today. And so I'm going to give a pretty brief warm up as to what he's done, but then I don't want to delay too long. So again, you've got the the work in Boondocks, you've got the work in American Gods, you've got the work in Winning Time, the Rise of the Lakers Dynasty, you've got Blade, he's worked on Marvel's Runaways and other TV shows like Till Death, and the Pelican Brief, and he's done a ton of things insofar as what he's contributed to the entertainment business. And so we're going to kind of like focus on some of that, but also focus on some of the comic book biz and love and things of that nature. So Rodney, what I'm going to do first is kind of like pose to you the question so far as like in your writing, your family roots and how your mother may have influenced and your dad may have influenced and your kids even influencing your writing, and how it went from as a kid, kind of like when you wanted to write, and maybe or as a young adult when you wanted to write, to the first projects to now. How has that changed for you?
Well, I mean, if you're asking where all of this came from, I mean, I was an only child, although I have a lot of half brothers and sisters. And I spent a lot of time by myself as a kid. So I did a lot of reading. My mother was a school teacher, so there were books everywhere. So I would just pick up a book, and I didn't realize at the time the type of stuff I was reading, like Soul on Ice, Man Child in the Promised Land, like classic books. I had no idea. They were just books that were laying around in my house. And this was as a child, like a young child. And so I was sort of getting the education to walk with the education, the formal education that you get in school. And again, I spent a lot of time by myself. So it was a lot of movies, a lot of TV shows, a lot of drawing and reading comic books, and just ingesting a lot of stuff and really only having myself to share it with. So my imagination sort of grew. I didn't know at the time that, I was learning sort of the structure of story, but I was just reading and studying. And so, as I went along in life, I think it was the 8th grade or so, I had a teacher, Jay Silverberg, at Annapolis in middle school. Yeah, and he gave me an assignment for the school newspaper. It was a journalism class. And I was sort of the class clown during my time. And I did a really good job on it. And he said in front of the whole class that if I ever spent as much time working on my writing skills as I did being a class clown, I might turn out one day to be a really good writer. And I laughed it off, but in the back of my mind, anytime anybody asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, I said a writer, because somebody had actually given me some type of affirmation, validation that I could do it well. And it sort of just lingered around until, I graduate from high school, I go to college, I try to be an athlete. I don't know why I thought it was going to work in college when it didn't work in high school, but I tried. And found myself sort of at a dead end to where I didn't know what I'd be. I was sort of lost as to what I was going to do with my life. And circumstances came together that a friend of mine, a really good friend, asked me if I could do anything with my life, what would it be? And he just said, don't even think about it. Just instinctively, what would it be? And I said, I'd write movies and TV shows. And he said, just go do that. And I immediately came up with 1,000 excuses why that wouldn't work. I didn't know anybody. You know, I'm in Maryland. California is way over there. And this is before the internet. So I really am at a loss for how I'm going to make this, you know, this jump from one thing to another. He said, you know, just take one step. You take one step and see what happens. So shortly thereafter, I enrolled in Howard University, this time not to be an athlete, but to be a writer, a student. And I started to immerse myself in film and television, and you know, going to independent films and really just looking at them with a different eye rather than to be entertained, just to sort of pay attention. And had a lot of great professors there, and slowly but surely, the universe sort of turned in my favor. I was working at Georgetown Law Center, and a movie, The Pelican Brief, was going to film. I saw overtime detail that they were going to be filming there for like 2 weeks. And I signed up for every overtime detail. And like the first day, I remember first person I ever saw that had anything to do with the movie was Denzel Washington. And he spoke to me and I showed him where he had to go. And, you know, then it was Julia Roberts. And so they let me just kind of hang around and watch everything be done. And I noticed that there were these workers there, like guys, young guys, just running around, fetching sodas, locking up corners, helping the extras do different things. So I asked one of the guys, a guy named Gary Fiorelli, I said, how do you get a job doing what you do? And he said, you know, we got a big day coming up this weekend at the Washington Monument. We got 10,000 extras. We could use some extra people. And I said, great. You know, it was only $100 a day or something like that. So I showed up, and I probably worked harder doing that than I did anything I'd ever worked on in my life, because I was so happy to just be close to a movie set and be working on it. And I would have done anything they asked me to do. And I went back and I thought about it, that this was the first time I had really had an emotional connection to work. Before, work was just that. It was work. You do the work, you get a check, and you go home. This made me want to come to work early. Made me want to stay late. I was really, really engaged. And so I think Gary saw that. He was the guy that was in charge of all the production assistants. And he said, man, you should stay with us. Just keep working with us. So I quit my job at Georgetown and I stayed with the production. And I didn't realize that after quitting my job, the movie only went 6 more weeks. So I'm unemployed after 6 weeks.
Right.
He had another movie, Major League 2, and he brought me on to that. And I worked with that, and eventually they put me with Charlie Sheen, and we got to be relatively close. And this went on and on for about 6 months to a year. And then I ended up getting a job in Virginia on a movie, Major Payne, with Damon Wayans. And about 4 days in, Damon and me and Damon, other than the cast members, were I think the only Black people there. And Damon asked me to come into his trailer. He wanted to have a word with me. And I'm like, oh man, what did I say wrong? What did I do? And I went in, he said, what do you want to do with your career, man? I know you sound smarter than just a production assistant. And I said, well, you know, I want to be a writer. He said, really? I said, yeah. So for the next 2 years, he let me ride around the country, following him, working on his movies. I'd throw a line to him every once in a while with the scripts. And, you know, it was the first, I'd live in my car. And then I would travel like from Maryland to Boston, Maryland to California, Maryland to wherever he was. And then finally, on a movie Bulletproof, he said, you know, man, if you really want to take this seriously, you got to move to California. And I was terrified because I had never lived outside of Maryland before in my life. And I moved, I pack up my stuff, I moved to California. I lived in my car for like 8 months. And struggled for a minute to find work. A couple of times, wanted to come back to Maryland, wanted to come home and give up. And I had some really good friends encourage me to stay. And, you know, slowly but surely figured out how to survive first. Survival came before writing. I had to figure out how to make a check and get an apartment and get out of my car. And then slowly but surely figure out, okay, I did that. How can I get into this writing thing? And I just really started to focus and hone my craft of writing. And Damon came back around again and had to show my wife and kids. And he hired me to be a punch-up writer for a day. And I just kept coming back. This was before 9/11. So security was loose at the ABC studios. And I got to be friends with the security guard. He's, oh, you back again? I was like, yeah. And he just let me come in, and I just walk in the writer's room and sit on the couch. And eventually Don Rio, the showrunner, hired me as a staff writer. And I sort of never looked back from there. I went from My Wife and Kids to Everybody Hates Chris. And then I did the Boondocks while I was doing both those other shows. And I started rewriting movies and different things. And I would work with stand-up comics on their material. And sort of, that was the beginning of the journey. And still going to this day, trying to do more and figure out how to stay around, hang around in this business.
Hey, John, I think you got a question. You were going to mention something about wife and kids.
Oh yeah, well, I looked up the credits on it, but that may not even be the full answer. Yeah, Rodney. Yeah, my wife and I, we used to watch it a lot. My wife and kids. And by the way, I watched an interview that you did, and I know you were talking about some things you went through, but in 2020, Bill knows, in 2020, yeah, it was a rough year for me. I lost my wife in
I'm sorry to hear
2020, yeah, due to cancer, and it was just a tough time, but I'm doing okay now. But
Good.
On My Wife and Kids, there was an episode, it was called The Funeral, which is generally not a funny topic, but can you hear me okay there?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Keep going. You good?
Okay, all right. Well, yeah, there was an episode called The Funeral, and there was a comedian on there, and Junior, who was played by George Gore, there was a guy he wanted to be his friend, and it was about his grandmother, his 103-year-old grandmother that he had lost. Are you familiar with that episode?
Vaguely.
Yeah,
There's a lot of episodes of television ago. But
yeah.
I remember George Gore. I remember an episode called The Funeral, but you'd have to tell me the details because it's been a minute.
Well, there was just there was a guy that worked for, and I forget Damon Wayans, his name on the show, but there was a guy that worked for him. He just wanted the family to be his friend. He wanted them to come to the funeral and sing with him and everything. So at the end of the episode, Junior says, I can't be your friend. You're giving me a hard time. You're bothering me. You're getting in the way. So the guy says at the end of the show, he goes, well, I guess I can't share Grammy's $2 million with you since we're not friends. It was just a hilarious episode to me.
There you go. There you go.
I think my favorite episode on there was the one when David Allen Greer came through, and that with that balding, that hair loss medicine that would make them go crazy and paranoid.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I remember. Yes.
I think that's my favorite episode of that one. So
yeah, look, I want to ask one more question. I'll let you take over there.
No issue.
Yes, Rodney, what would you say was a defining moment that let you know, hey, I can make a living at this. I'm pretty good at this. What do you think was the turning point in your career?
I haven't actually had that moment yet. I'm waiting for that moment to come. One day maybe it will, but I haven't really had that moment yet. Every day I sort of wake up grateful that I have employment and still living in, I won't say fear, but concern in the back of my mind that it could all go away. So, I just keep going and going and going, and things have been working out, but knock on wood, I never assume that it's going to work out,
I get it.
It's more of that than anything else. It's never as much work. Oh, no, I can't. My therapist would get mad if I said that. It's I'm fortunate to be working as much as I am, and I just never make the assumption that it's always going to be this way.
Right. Yeah, you always have to have that healthy fear, like you said, that it could go away. That's what keeps you going.
Yes.
I understand. You're always reaching for more, always striving.
There you go. There you go.
I think that's more a self-respect type thing as opposed to fear. No one wants to be hungry again, and no one wants to live in a truck in or hide my car from the repo man and things like that. Like I went through, I get it.
Yeah.
Been there, done that. But I think it's more a healthy respect of, I think what you do, and because you do it so well, and what John does for a living as a teacher, and I'm in the Army. I think it's just a great respect for what you do. Let's see here. So going back to writing, your comedic side. And so I remember growing up in Annapolis, and I'm sure John has probably identified with what I'm going to say. But I know in Annapolis growing up, we had to be pretty quick-witted, especially if you were a nerd and a Black nerd at that. And especially some of the neighborhoods where we would, meet some of the folks from Annapolis. And so that Jones inside that you had to get back quick. And sometimes you had to go, get back home with your feelings hurt. Did you feel that helped you in your writing or whatever?
I mean, I certainly developed a sense of humor. I didn't, again, have brothers and sisters. So, and the community was unrelenting. Kids can be hard on each other. And so I learned how to snap back quickly. And, to the point where I think it became, I'm very sensitive. I was a very sensitive kid and relatively insecure. And so I was always going to get you before you got me. Like that was my superpower, that I would, before you saw any of my shortcomings, of which there were many and are, I was going to seek out yours and seek and destroy, so that I would be able to return home safe and ego intact. So I think, I learned that thing. But what I also learned is when I got to Hollywood, that only takes you but so far. You have to learn how to do it within the realm of a character, and you have to learn how to tell a story and be funny while you're telling that story. And the different types of humor, there's down the middle of the road type humor. There's the type of bombastic humor like the Boondocks. There's a lot of different things in between. And the hardest thing sometimes is finding out what you do and finding someone who respects that and wants to pay you to do that. Because you could be in the wrong place at the wrong time. You can learn the wrong way. So many variables that come into being able to have longevity in this, that certainly in comedy, because comedy is, like I said, a very subjective thing that every 10 years or so seems to evolve. Like what worked a long time ago, what I grew up with, Richard Pryor and Flip Wilson and those people, certainly doesn't go today. Now it's a different tone, it's a different thing, and you have to be able to continue to stay with the voice of the moment, or you'll get dated and you could lose your way. So for me, I'm fortunate. I mostly write drama now. Every once in a while within my drama, there are jokes, but I don't really, I don't consider myself to be a comedy writer at this point, because I know too many comedy writers are really, really great at it, and I'm okay at it. So yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, and so one last thing so far, well, kind of like comedy, but yet I want to more so drift towards drama now. So the writing styles of writing with a team, comedy team, whatever, right, for comedy or drama, of this, how is that energy different than when you're writing as from the what is it, the where am I my notes, the life writing episode 12 that you had with Stephen Barnes and Tanarive Du, so far as your spec stories and your spec writing, and how is that different between the energy with the team versus you?
Energy wise, I mean, I think it's one is being self-aware enough to be able to work with a group of people to create a thing, and The other is mostly is movie writing versus TV writing. In television, 9 times out of 10, you're writing with other human beings. And features, you're writing by yourself. And comic books, you're writing by yourself. And so, you know, the dynamic is different, but only in the sense of it's like being in a band when you're in television. You know, you got to know when to let somebody have their moment to play their solo, you know, and to be able to play off of that, you got to be able to sense what other people are doing. Whereas when you're doing a movie, it's just really you and yourself and sitting in a room with the door closed and writing one word after the other.
Okay. I'm going to go back to your childhood, but also now. So I want to go into more of the entertainment thing. So your favorite comic books growing up versus now?
You know, it's funny because even though I buy comic books right now, I tend to still like the same types of things that I did when I was a kid. Well, there's a duality in that. When I was a kid, talking about 8, 9 years old, I loved Neil Adams. I love his version of Batman and just his whole influence on comic books across the board. As I got older, I sort of evolved to liking writers, Alan Moore, Frank Miller, guys like that, Neil Gaiman, guys who wrote more prosy type books that felt like literature more so than the guys that did the superhero, you know, pile bam, you know, that type of stuff. And so I'm sort of still in that place right now where I like a book that is more emotional and more literature than some of the stuff they do right now feels like it's almost advertising for the movies, you know, like it's trying to be a semblance of what the movie's going to be, or feeding off the other and not so much connected to its own thing. So I tend to, when I do sit down and read a book, I buy a lot more than I read. I tend to I tend to go for books that really grab my attention and feel more like I'm reading a novel than an actual comic book.
Yeah, I can identify. I think we all of us on this conversation can identify with buying more than we read.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's part of Rodney. What had me, I went down to Miami to help my mom around the house and whatnot. That's part of what caused me to be very late coming back. I always have to find a comic book store on the road. A crazy thing is, Will and I, we went to college together. We pledged together. As a matter of fact, that's how we met at the beginning of the pledge process for Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity. And so we went all through college. We're studying, you know, having fun, parties, whatnot. So one day in Atlanta, he came to help me move. This is crazy because we're in college together. He came to help me move, and I let the door of the truck up. He says, "Hey, those are long boxes." I said, "Yeah, I collect comics." And then he goes, "Me too," which is crazy. So we went all through college. I guess we were so busy with college life, we did not realize that we collected comics. And so, yeah, I've been collecting since '74. So I can agree with what you're saying. I think Will there, he's been collecting just as long. So yeah, we're huge comic collectors. And I heard you mention in the interview too, do you still collect the toys? I know you said you still buy the books. Yeah, we buy more books than we can ever read. As you know, years ago, you used to be able to read them all. There weren't that many titles. Today, you can't read them all. You just can't.
No, and I can't buy them all. I mean, I think certainly I spend most of my time making books right now than I do actually buying. I mean, well, reading. I make them more than I read them. I still buy every Wednesday. It's like a crackhead. I still go to the store because it's habit, and I buy them, and I see an interesting cover or I do a thing. But I think I call myself more of a collector right now as far as my personal side. This morning, I just bought a bunch of Avengers, I think, like issues 3 to 27 of the original run. And
jealous.
Wow.
And, I had a signing at a comic book store today, they always give me a discount whenever I sign. So I use that discount to get books that typically I don't want to go on eBay and, do a thing. So it's always good stuff. But yeah, collecting, and just building my collection because it's something to do. When you get old, you look for stuff to do. So I'm getting old and I'm looking for stuff to do.
So did you have a favorite hero?
Yeah, Swamp Thing
Great,
was
great.
probably my favorite character. Both the Bernie Wrightson, Len Wein run and the Alan Moore, Bissett Totobin run. Those are probably my favorite books of all time. But I usually follow creatives like Frank Miller on Daredevil, Frank Miller on Batman, Mike Grell on Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes, Jim Starlin on Warlock, George Perez on Avengers, John Byrne on Avengers and X-Men. I just like those seminal runs for some reason. They grabbed my attention as a kid. And I was fortunate just to be able to be in a world where there was so many books around me that I had a variety of books. I mean, I was such a junkie at a point where I would use my lunch money to buy books and then steal them when I could. Not that I'm proud or advocating anyone to actually steal, but I was such a fanatic that when I saw a Neil Adams cover, I had to have it. And I remember in Annapolis,
Right.
farm store right on the
Yep,
corner.
right around the corner.
Of, I remember Dean had a red Corvette, orange Corvette, excuse me. He used to be the manager of Farm Store.
Mhm.
And he caught me stealing comic books one time and said he was going to tell my mother. And I was terrified. For 2 months, I couldn't go to Farm Store. And it was impossible to not go to Farm Store because my grandmother would send me to play her numbers, or I would have to, that was like the store. So how do I not go in the store that I have to go in because it's the only store? And I would walk all the way to Eastport.
So with the drug fair.
Yeah, just to get past Farm Store because I wasn't allowed in there and because I was stealing. And eventually my mother went in one day and said, boy, go in there and get me something out of the car. And I saw Dean standing at the counter and I went in and he saw me and he saw my mother and he called my mother in and he told her about me stealing comic books. And I thought I was getting beaten, but it ended up where she told me don't do it no more. And I was like, whew, if I had known that was going to be it, I would have stolen more. But yeah, that was how much I loved and still love comic books. I just don't have to steal them no more.
Yeah, that's a blessing. So with how about cartoons from back in the day? And if there are any that you're watching now, because I know you're busy now making stuff, but if
I don't really, I had a conversation the other day with a guy about what Saturday morning cartoons used to mean. There was the 4 o'clock cartoons after school, like Speed Racer and Kimber the White Line and Ultraman, which wasn't a cartoon, but it was on. Then Star Trek would come on at a certain time, like after school times, because it was in syndication. But Saturday morning cartoons were always Super Friends or some version of Super Friends, and every once in a while Marvel would do their version of a Spider-Man and his friends or Spider-Man or something, but it was usually Spider-Man oriented. Then it was like Fat Albert and some of the other stuff, Scooby-Doo and the stuff that went around there, Hong Kong Phooey voiced by the late great Scatman Crothers. And so it was a great time to be a kid, and in a way, I always hate talking about it because it sounds like I'm the old dude saying, get off my lawn, kid. But the thing that I thought was better about that time was it sort of created a structure for you as a kid because you weren't inundated. Now, my kids can pick up the phone to anything they want to see. They can push a button, they can see it at any time. They don't really have to structure or discipline their lives to be able to see a thing. When it was only 3 channels, you had no choice but to know that at 9 o'clock, such and such a time, Super Friends was coming on. If you overslept, Super Friends was gone. There wasn't no go back and stream it again and again and again. You had to hope, if you liked an episode, you had to hope that the rerun was going to come on at a certain time. There was no, whatever. So I think there was one of the reasons that we remember it the way that we do is because you had to go through an extra sense of effort in order to be able to consume it. It wasn't just easily laid out before you. And I'm not saying ease is necessarily a bad thing, but I think when you make an emotional connection with something, regardless of what it is, if you're writing a script, if you're doing any endeavor, the more difficult, the degree of difficulty, the more you have to give of yourself in order to be able to accomplish it. I think the more you become connected to the thing that you're actually doing. So I think that goes, whether it's in childhood, myself and my good friend Morel Hart used to cut grass on the weekends. So we knew if we cut grass, we had to do it either after cartoons or before cartoons. And if we want to play basketball, we had to do it if we did it Sunday mornings, it was 7 a.m. to about 10, 11 o'clock, because you knew you wanted to see X, Y, Z. So there was this running structure that you had to have even as a child in order to be able to grow up. And you did it yourself. My parents didn't have time to, do this for me or lay this out for me. So I think, we were more responsibility was demanded of us early on in life, which I think has served me well, and later in my life, because as a writer, no one tells me per se when I have to do a thing. I just know I have to have it by a certain time. And if I don't have it, there's going to be repercussions. So I have to be disciplined within to know my deadlines, to know that if I don't get my books written on time, which I am behind right now, that we're going to be delayed a week or two, which is never good for, any of the process of selling books, because if the audience, the buyer believes they're going to get a book in 3 weeks or a month, they want to get it in 3 weeks or a month. And then in my case, because I'm doing so many books, I write 10 books a month, that, along with having a television career and a film career, it's difficult I'm behind sometimes, but that means like tonight, I have to write until it's done. That could be 1 a.m, 2 a.m. And the quality has to be still to a place where y'all want to talk to me. And so again, I think it's all connected to the nature of living the life that I've lived up to this point.
Yes, Rodney, if you would, so that I can make sure they're on my pull list. I spend an awful lot per month on books. So if you could tell myself, Will, and the viewers, which titles are you currently working on, so I can make sure I have them all.
For Image, I'm doing Philadelphia and Nita Hawes' Nightmare Blog. I have another series called Monarch that's starting in February.
Okay.
For Dynamite Comics, I can't say the one that I'm writing for them right now because they haven't announced it, but they will next week. For my Substack page, I do a zombie book called 20 Degrees Past Rigor. I do Elysium Gardens. I do Johnny Gatlin, and I do a book, The Butcher of Black Bottom. I just finished The Mandalorian for Marvel Lucasfilm.
Okay.
I have a DC book that I'm doing right now that I can't say anything about. That's a pretty big deal. And then I have my own publishing imprint, Zombie Love Studios, and I'm putting books together for that. I have Crownsville, I have Blackula, and I have Florence and Normandy, and I have another book, Alexander Rain, and I think that's it. Oh, and Tales from the Crypt with Snoop Dogg. So all of those are at some stages of continuously writing and assembling and, overseeing and doing those types of things.
So speaking of,
good job.
Speaking on that, your schedule of writing, because if you have all those balls juggling, there's got to be, of course, a time when you have a ball in your hand and got to toss it. That's scheduled. So how do you schedule that, your writing to those different projects per day, or is it per week? How do you
it's according to what takes precedent. I mean, recently writing Winning Time season 2 has sort of occupied a large portion of my time, which is making me delayed in other things. But for instance, I'll get up, we start at 6 a.m, sometimes 6, 7 on Winning Time, and then finish around 6 or 7 in the afternoon or night. And then I'll go to Snoop Dogg's house and we'll work on it. I'm writing his biopic, and I'll be working with him on his movie until midnight, 1 a.m. And then I do it all over again and again and again. In between, I try to find gaps. If Snoop doesn't want to work that night, or we finish an episode and take a day on winning time, I try to knock out a book. And like today, when I finish talking to you guys, I'm going to write Philadelphia 25. And tomorrow I have to write another book, and then I have to write a proposal for a book within the next 48 hours before Monday I get back on winning time.
Wow.
And, you know, it really, it's not as much structure to it as I would like. And it's not like this all the time, but it is like this a lot. I mean, the television schedule, television is like a job. It's like a regular 9 to 5 that you have to go to every day. And I'm sort of in a place where, you know, you have to render unto Caesar his due. So for the next 20 weeks, that'll be my life working on that. And I have to find time to do that. And there are other things, you know, civic work I'm doing in Annapolis right now. You know, I have to travel sometimes and talk to authors and, you know, directors about different projects that I want to do. And I may have to do some book signings at places outside of California and travel to do that. And it just means I have to take the work with me. Or when I was back in Annapolis not long ago, literally I was writing winning time between meeting with, you know, the mayor's office or doing a signing or doing whatever. When I'm not doing that, I'm back in my hotel room working on the show or working on a book or doing something. So it's a constant grind. It's a constant grind.
Are you a pervert? Of course, with this massive workload, it's got to be all digital. Because I was going to ask, would you prefer freehand or digital?
No, I write by hand. I write by hand, and I send it to my assistant, and he types it and makes it pretty, and I edit it from that. And you know, it looks a lot like this, you know, where that's how it looks, and which is a mess, but eventually it won't be a mess. By midnight tonight, it'll look really, really pretty. And but right now it looks like how I feel.
Yeah, and that's I think it's cool, because for me writing, that's I can't do a typewriter, because if I feel like I have to edit my hand, takes too long to edit, and I'm too much of a perfectionist when I'm writing by typewriter. So it doesn't flow so smoothly. So I appreciate you sharing that. It encourages me to do that.
Yeah. Got to do whatever it takes to make it work is what you do.
Got you. Okay, so I'm going to try to move through some of these stuff, last few things with your Star Wars. Now, in your Star Wars writing, because you've done Lando, Double or Nothing, and now you're working on Mandalorian. Is that something that you work in conjunction? Because I know that there are canon borders that you have to write within, with George Lucas or Jon Favreau or Dave Filoni. Or how does that work for you?
I usually work with Marvel Publishing and Lucasfilm Publishing. And so far I've done 3 projects with them. I did Lando, I did IG-88 from War of the Bounty Hunters, and now Mando. I mean, I really just work with those editors that are on those books and take notes from both companies. You know, the Mandalorian book is really just an adaptation of the television show. So it's not like there's a whole lot of, in quotes, writing. It's more of interpreting and trying to find a plot and a pace that suits a comic book. It's not like Lando or IG-88 where they're originals. It's just, you know, original stories that I came up with.
Right.
So, you know, it really is just working with those 2 companies and the editing departments of those 2 companies.
Okay. And so going with Mandalorian, and I know that Carl Weathers is directing some of the episodes of Mandalorian. Is there any perspective or that you get a chance to work with him?
I've worked with Carl. I worked with Carl on a TV show, Brothers, way back when, like 2009, 2010. Great guy. But my deal is at HBO, which is Warner Brothers, and those shows are on Disney. So I probably won't be working on those shows anytime soon. Tracking.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, maybe we'll get a chance to see that blessing at another time, or maybe just something you put into the script and it bleeds over once.
You never know. You never
exactly. let's see here. Artists that you want to work with. And before you go to artists you want to work with, I know with John Michael and I, for me, what brought me to your work and your comic book work was the covers on Philadelphia, because it was Jason Shawn Alexander. And so I know he and I were drawn to Jason Shawn by the work he did on Spawn. So what brought you to him, or did he find you, and how did that work in other artists that you want to work with over?
Jason and I was hired or asked to write to interview Jason for a art book, probably about 10 years ago now. And we met, and I didn't know who Jason was. Jason didn't know who I was. And it's odd even that I was asked to do this and put with him, but we only lived, we found out we lived a mile away from each other. So we kept hanging together after the interview, and we would go to dinner. And eventually, because he did comics and I wanted to do comics, we would pitch each other ideas. And he would always, he hated my ideas, I hated his ideas. So we never did anything for years. So one night we were at dinner, he was drinking, and I pitched him Philadelphia. And he said, I like that. And I'm thinking it's the liquor, I'm not thinking he really likes it. But
Right.
The next morning he said, man, that vampire thing you were talking about with John Adams, do you have that on paper? And I said, no, but I can put it on paper. And after a day, I put it on paper, and he took it to Todd McFarlane, and Image said yes, and Philadelphia was born.
Wow. Yeah, because I was looking at I have all the books, but they're spread out so all through all the different months of books or whatever boxes. And so I had to buy the trade paperback in order to, the digital trade paperback, to catch up what you're doing. But what really blew my mind was at the end of the trade paperback was the process that you and also Jason Shawn do in order to create that book. And in particular, Jason Shawn's with the live models and things like that he has. Just amazing. And then not only that, the recreation of the faces, I mean, they are so close to the actual models' faces. I mean, the dude he's good. And not just good, he's excellent.
And he'll tell you that too. He is. But I think it's really a thing of, Jason is an artist before he's an illustrator. If you were able to break into his house, you would see some really fine art hanging on his walls. And that was the thing that got me excited about him when I interviewed him, it wasn't just comic books. It was if I could write to his level of art, we could really have something special. And then something special that you don't always see in books that have African-American culture at the center of it. A lot of times you have Black heroes or Black stories, but they don't always have that level of technical precision, technical acumen. They're really just trying to be what they are, but they aren't aspiring to be something else. And this isn't to disparage anyone's work. Everybody has what they have, and they have their taste.
Right.
But my thing was, I was inspired by a lot. When I talked to you about Swamp Thing or some of the early influences, I was shooting for that. I was shooting for the vertical thing. And, again, Jason being the artist that he was, I just wanted to be able to write scripts that inspired him to do what he did in the way that I knew he was capable of doing it, and do the same with myself.
Got you. Hey, John Michael, didn't you meet, or you had a chance to meet him or something like that, didn't you?
Yeah, I wanted to say, it was at before the pandemic. I went to the Heroes Convention in Charlotte, North Carolina. I admired Spawn, the book. As a matter of fact, Rodney, I have the entire run of Spawn, probably in doubles. I have every issue. Yeah. But I went to the Heroes Convention, and I had seen Jason Shawn Alexander's work on Empty Zone. I don't know if you remember that book. A lot of people don't know Empty Zone. So, I like that story. So I saw him there. I was able to get to his table. And so he let me go through his portfolio. Rodney, I saw some original art in there. I could not afford it at the time, what he was asking. But what amazed me was Cyan in Spawn is typically portrayed as a 4-year-old or 5-year-old. That's the age that Todd McFarlane had been portraying Cyan as. But when I was looking through this art, there was a story in Spawn some years back. I think it was called The Horror. It's like a 6 or 7 issue run that Jason Shawn Alexander did on Spawn. It was his first take on Spawn. So when I'm looking through the portfolio, I saw this teenager, a girl that was portrayed as a teenager in the Spawn books. I told him, I said, who is this? I said, I don't remember seeing a teenager in Spawn. He goes, that's my Cyan. As a matter of fact, the book was just about due for release, and he had that original art there. I was blown away on his images for Spawn. I mean, it was amazing. So I got some signed books by him and got them graded. So that was my run-in with him, with Jason Shawn Alexander. That was before the pandemic. I don't know if you've ever had a chance to go to the Heroes Convention in Charlotte. It's a great one.
No, I haven't, but I talked to Jason this morning. That's the closest I can say I've been to it. And wait until you see his work on Blackula. He does some incredible work on Blackula.
Oh,
really, really great
okay.
Oh,
Yeah, I mean,
I'm feeding already.
I don't know if you, I don't know if you've seen, he told me, I asked him about some of the covers on Empty Zone or Spawn. He said that some of those covers are on canvas. I don't know. He said they're like 8 or 9 feet tall, maybe by 5 or 6 feet wide.
Yeah, that's true. I've seen him.
Yeah.
I go to his studio and in his home, and I see a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be an amazing experience. Yeah.
Yeah.
So are there any other artists that you have thought about?
I mean, most of them, Neil Adams did a cover of Philadelphia for us. That was a blessing. Jim Starlin, I've got some originals from him. George Perez, I got some originals from him. Most of the guys that I really dig from my childhood would be Mike Rell did a recreation for me. Tom Rainey did one for me. Most of the guys I'm really sort of getting introduced to now through actually being in the publishing, on the publishing side of it, that are doing some really great work. And, John Wayshak, Jermaine, I'm going to mess his name up, so I'm not going to try, but he does some stuff for me. It's too many to name, but most of the guys that I want to work with, I'm working with. So that's the blessing. Yeah.
Okay, let's see here, 7:19. So I've had you for about 40 minutes. So I'm gonna try to not keep you detained too much longer because I know you got what you said you got to do.
Right. Yeah,
exactly. Okay, so you already answered the writing and reading schedule. So your prize books, things that stand out in your mind so far as like, I had to have it and I finally got it, and or statues or anything of the sort, or action figures.
Yeah, I mean, I have the full run of Swamp Thing and both runs of Swamp Thing, CGC, and signed by their respective creators. Same thing with the X-Men, from the Dave Cochran 94 all the way through Burns run. Most everything I got, it took me years to, like, I'm building my Avengers right now. Trying to get from 1 to 250 of the original series. I'm really more of a Bronze and Silver Age guy as far as collecting is concerned. Not too much. Yeah, I got all the Superboy Legion superheroes. Neil Adams' Action Comics. I got all the stuff that I really, or I'm in the process of, like, every once in a while I get bored, or, I finish a run on a book, or I do something that I feel deserves celebration, and I go on eBay and say, you know what, I'm gonna get the first Black Panther and with the Fantastic Four appearance number, whatever. And I do it like that. And the biggest thing right now is discovering stuff that I didn't know existed.
Right.
Some House of Mystery covers that Adams did or Wrightson did. And I always get excited about, when I go to a comic store, I typically go back to the back issue section, with the ones that they put in the case. more so than the new stuff, because I feel like the new stuff is the business I'm in right now.
Mhm.
But the part of me that's emotionally connected to it is the old stuff. So
Track. Do you do any collecting of sports cards or anything like that, or did that pass you by?
I know I did baseball and football up until my teen years, but comic books sort of beat that out. You know, once I started playing sports, I just stuck with comic books.
Got you. And so I like I said, in preparing for this video, for this interview, I was tuned into the Life Writing YouTube that you did for episode 12 for that show. And I was really impressed with the depth of the emotional connectivity that you had in that interview. And what's really impressive also was the fact that the connection of yourself to Stephen, and you called him like a father figure. And I know with writing and things of the nature, when we talk about some of the rough edges that happen in our childhood or whatever, and how those influence writing and things of that nature, and how that for you, having him as a mentor / father figure is important, and how you've collected father figures over the years. It was just, I wanted to compliment both you and the family that was on that video as to how heartfelt that interview is, and I recommend anyone to view it. And I'll put the link to it in the comments or the details of this video. But is there anything that you wanted to add, maybe from that interview, so far as like dads and things like that? Because I know with John Michael's dad, he was one of those father figures for me outside of my own father that I connected to. And he also passed in 2020 as well. So if John Michael didn't tell you, his dad passed first that March, and his wife passed later on in late August, September. Wow. So in 2020. So, and yeah, he had a humdinger of a year. But it's with father figures, as we've gotten older, especially those of us who didn't have the best relationship, how has that worked for you as you collect those figures?
You know, I guess the only way I can say this is how it pops up in my head. I mean, I think for me, I found what I needed when I needed it, you know, whether it was when I was in Annapolis and I was trying to find my way, men would come along and sort of, well, who the voice I needed to hear when I needed to hear it would pop up, and it would evolve, because there are moments where you find a teacher and then you sort of outgrow the teacher. You know, you need another teacher, you need another teacher, you know, or you become the teacher in some instances. Right. And it doesn't mean that those people don't no longer have the same voice in your life. It's just that you get to a place where you need different information. And so I cherish all of them along the way. It wouldn't be here without all of them along the way. But it really is more of enough self-awareness to know what voice you needed to hear when you needed to hear it. And I've just been fortunate that those people have been placed in my path.
All right, John Michael, you have anything more?
Yeah. Oh, what I want to do we have time? I wanted to just share a few books, and then, yeah, I have to wrap it up and get to an appointment.
Okay.
Is that okay with you, Rodney?
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, I just want to share a few books. They're all going to be great. Let's see here. Where will I begin? All right. And you just let me know if you can see them, okay? I just have a few books I'll share with you, and then I'll wrap up my portion. All right, here's the first one I wanted to share. I wish it was a higher grade. And what I'm going to do here, let me do it. All right, there we go. Here is an X-Men 94. Of course, you recognize that. That was the second appearance of the new X-Men. Make sure I got that quite right. Okay. All right, there we go. That one, I got an Ultimate Fallout 4 here. All right. I'll pull that back some. That's the first appearance of Miles Morales. I'm sure you're familiar with that. And this next book I got at a show, this is just for fun. This is just a book from 1954. It's Gabby #7. I just like the cover on it and the age of it. I like some
Nice.
of these classic. I like some of these classic books like this. This is from 1954.
Wow.
All right.
Nice.
And this is a Venom 14. This is what they call the back when they were doing the battle line covers.
Mm-hmm. Very nice.
If that doesn't grab you when you walk into the comic store,
Nothing will.
just make sure you get that the right angle. Yeah, there we go. All right. This next book I picked up because it was a Matt Baker done book. A lot of people don't know about Matt Baker, but if they have a chance, they should read up on Matt Baker. I'm in the process of reading a book on him. He was a famous, of course, African-American artist during the 40s. A lot of the covers, I don't think he got full credit for. And for the inside of the book. This is a Matt Baker book.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Very nice.
Okay, this is the first appearance of the black costume.
Yep.
I'm sure you have that one, Rodney. I'm sure you have that in your
Someplace,
collection.
yes, somewhere in there. Yeah, I do. I do.
Now, this next one, this Alex Ross cover, Spider-Man is one of my favorite characters. As a matter of fact, one of the first books I read was Amazing Spider-Man number 136. Back when I was in the 5th grade, I still remember. It was the first appearance of the Green Goblin 2. That's when Harry took over. And that was one of the first books I read of my early days. But this Alex Ross depiction of Spider-Man, it is excellent.
Beautiful book.
Yep. Let's see here. This is a 1 for 20. Let me try to get this right. This is a 1 for 25 variant for Superior Spider-Man number 25. It is also signed by Stan Lee. It's signed by Stan Lee.
Nice.
Last book. Everybody should have this in their collection. I'll take it even with the green label. My Marvel stamp is missing. You know about that last one. Hope 181.
Yep, I got it for Christmas this year.
Nice.
Oh, great.
Mhm.
I just sold mine. All right.
And that
Favorite characters? I'm gonna go right here.
Spectre.
Yeah. And then we got another one.
Mhm.
And last one, because I know you're running out of time, related to the movie that just came out last week.
Mhm.
All right, Brother Rodney. So I am very happy that you spent time with us today. So I'll tell you this much with Tuskegee. A lot of people, especially I remember one of my ex-girlfriends way back in the day said how people who went to Tuskegee, why is it that we are so much in love with that school while we always have to go back to homecoming? She said, it's almost like you guys are in a cult. So what's wrong with y'all? Why you so much in love with Tuskegee? But I would say like this, Tuskegee alumni and students, we have a deep love for Tuskegee, and it could be viewed as geekdom. So I appreciate the fact that we can share our geekdom with you and that you're a part of us. So I can't say I proclaim you a Tuskegee geek, but I can call you a two-Skegee geek because I own that one. And,
Very good.
and we appreciate you being with us.
Fair enough.
And
Thank you for having me.
Another thing with that, Rodney, you may not know, Damon's brother, Keenan Ivory Wayans, he pledged Alpha Phi Alpha at Tuskegee prior to us, yeah. And as a matter of fact, our line that Will and I pledged, before Keenan left, he did not get his shingle, which is his fraternity certificate. He came back after we pledged and was the grand marshal for one of our homecoming parades. And we were able to get the paperwork submitted and get Keenan his shingle. That was during the late 80s. Yeah, that was around 89 or not.
It was 89.
It
was
89. Yeah, it was in 1989. Yeah. Well, I certainly want to say thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule and speaking with us here today.
Thank you for having me.
We are 2SkeGEEKS about it, and much continued success to you. And we're just glad you're doing all you're doing. We really appreciate it.
Thank you
you,
very
sir.
much, man. I really appreciate it. Look forward to talking to you guys again.
Oh, thank you
All
so
right,
much,
thank
sir.
you.
Have a great
All right.
evening.
Take it easy.
All right,
Bye-bye.
take care.